Welcome to Richer Souls, Scott Mautz. It's great to have you join us today.
Thanks for having me here. I hope to make all the souls that listen in today maybe just a little bit richer, Rocky. How about that? I'll see
I
what I
love
can do.
that. I don't know why all my guests don't start with that. Maybe we're going to have to train them that's the way to get started.
That's the way to do it right there.
I'm excited to learn from you. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Yeah, growing up, look, Rocky, it wasn't always easy for me growing up. I was a kid that had a lot of kind of physical challenges. I had scoliosis of the spine and I walked really funny. And I find out later in life that I have, the hips of a 90-year-old as a 10-year-old and, all things that had to be replaced and fixed and changed. And I have a neurological disorder when I was a kid. I still do today. So, I learned a lot about just kind of building up resilience and fortitude in the face of setbacks and learning to smile at life and, just kind of take it all as it comes because, it wasn't always easy for me as a kid. I had my fair share of bullies in my life, when I was a kid that I had to work through and, but my family kind of helped me all through that by helping me to just stay focused on who I am, my values, what I'm trying to accomplish in life. I remember my older brothers clearly telling me, look, these bozos who make fun of how you walk, they're not going to be around, 3 years from now, after you graduate. So just set them aside. And I remember that kind of being ingrained in me early. And, my first money lesson probably came to me when I started a company when I was still in high school, where we essentially not only would install swimming pools, but we would put it like the back end service. We would clean pools and clean the motors and take care of the pools. And I learned a tough lesson, Rocky, which this is going to be groundbreaking for you and your audience. Are you ready for my first money lesson?
Yes.
You're going to be blown away. It turns out, Rocky, you have to bring in more revenue than your costs if you want to be profitable. And I learned that as a 17-year-old kid that the expenses of running the business didn't quite match up to the revenue we were bringing in. And I soon learned, I see how this works. If you want to have a profitable business, you actually have to have a revenue stream that's a little bit more productive and offsets the cost. So that was my first money lesson as a kid right there.
So I asked you before the recording, have you heard of the book Profit First? You said no.
I should have read it.
Had you read that as a kid, you would have known. And here's the aha moment for you, though. That book was written because most business owners still haven't learned that lesson, or they don't know how to keep their costs below their revenue.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
I think that's why most businesses fail, is they don't understand that simplicity. And it's kind of funny. And for me, I started in the personal finance space.
Yeah.
And then I just assumed business owners understood business. And it turns out they're just like people, right? And they don't understand personal finance. How are they going to understand business finance? And they went into business to do what they loved, and so be it. So it's good that you learned the lesson early. Your family was entrepreneurial then?
You know what? They weren't. I think it just was a spirit that was born in me. My mom was a corporate executive, and I spent, the first 30 years of my career in the corporate life before I returned once again to being an entrepreneur, being a keynote speaker and a workshopper and an author and a writer and a course teacher like I am now. So the entrepreneurial spirit returned to me. But I guess even when I was in corporate life, Rocky, I was an intrapreneur, always looking for ways to innovate within the context of a big existing structure. It's just always been a part of who I am, really.
And that's not easy to do inside of a large corporation.
Yeah.
It's not always appreciated.
Right.
And people want you to fit in their box.
Yeah, that's right. And what's true, Rocky, you can tell me this is true over your life, but I've often found the kind of employees that I wanted working for me in the corporate world were the ones that, they recognize the structure. They recognize the benefits to process and structure, and and they get all of that. But then some of their best thinking and the best ideas come from living outside of that structure, and they have that spirit of, one of the key ways that we're going to be able to innovate and keep the company moving forward is to act as if we literally own the business, as if we were entrepreneurs. One of the biggest pieces of advice I used to give people that work for me, Rocky, was act as if this company that you work for was yours and you were down to your last two credit cards and you would max them out with lines of credit to keep the business going. I promise you'll spend money differently if you thought about it that way, and you'll be creative and innovative because you have to, because you want to save your own company and move it forward. And I've always found that to be a spirit very helpful.
And I think depending on the corporate culture, too often it's, well, this is the way we've always done it, or this is the way we do it. I was always a corporate misfit.
Yeah.
Because I was like, and I was blunt, I was like, well, that's pretty stupid. Why are we doing that when we could do it 10x better ways? And it's funny that I realized in most places they don't want change. People don't like change, do they?
No, not even more so. It's not necessarily, Rocky, the the new state that they fear migrating to. It's the process of transitioning to that new state itself. Perfect example. If I said, somebody said, man, I want to make a change in my life. I want to lose 20 pounds. The thought of being 20 pounds lighter is not the problem. The problem is the transition to that new state. Who wants to do all the work that comes with that? If you want to lose 20 pounds, you got to stop eating the stuff you love. You got to work out 5 times a week. And so it's the transition to change, actually, Rocky, that most of us really, really hate. And I teach and write and keynote and workshop a lot in the space of change and change management and, thriving in the face of change rather than, barely surviving. And I know that to be true. Most people really just can't stand the transition it takes to get the change.
So how do you help them get over it?
Oh, there's I could talk for hours and hours and hours. In the book that we'll talk about shortly, the mentally strong leader, I have a section in there, called the 2 and 4 behaviors of change, which is simply this. Change leaders, it's up to you to help your organization understand. Look, you can act as if change is happening to you or for you, and they create very different behaviors. 2 behaviors, Rocky, and I'm sure you've seen this in your own career, right? 2 behaviors look like, oh, change is happening to us. It's such a catastrophe. I'm going to be so exhausted when we're all done. Why does this keep happening? The change is not going to be for the better, right? 4 behaviors, acting like change is happening for you, are very, very different outcomes, right? They're things like, you know what? If I embrace this change, maybe it's going to lead to, it's like downloading a new software upgrade. I'm going to become me 2.0. 4 behaviors look like, you know what? I think this change could actually help me to grow as a person. It can help me figure out how to survive and thrive in setbacks and so forth. And so I think a big change part of it, and I talk about it in the book, The Mentally Strong Leader, is really, as a leader, defining the change choice. Are you going to act like change is happening to you or for you? And then spelling out what behaviors in each column look like and pushing the organization towards the 4 behaviors.
I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins, and that is kind of what he talks about. He goes, life happens for you, not to you.
Yeah, that's right.
And when you make that shift, you really start to, it's changing your attitude for how you look at life and how you look at the situation and how that comes to be.
Yeah, it's isn't it, Rocky, isn't it interesting, the power sometimes in a reframe of a simple word, or even sometimes, even a letter, it can be. I'll give you another example. I talk in the Mentally Strong Leader about sometimes we get worn down because we're worn down by the things that we don't like to do in our job, right? And we focus on those elements of the job that we don't have to do. And I'll give you the example where I'm going with this. The only thing I don't like about my job now as a keynoter, a writer, an author, a speaker, a course teacher, is I don't love to travel anymore. It got old a long time ago. And so I'm in an airport and I'm waiting for a flight to take off, and it gets delayed, and everybody's being nasty to the gate attendant, and it's a 5 hour flight. I'm feeling down about my job and my role, and I remember a simple reframe, in the spirit of 2 and 4, right? I remember, you know what? It's not that I have to do this. It's that I get to do this. And I talk about that in the Mentally Strong Leader, this simple reframe of thinking, no, I get to do this. Don't focus on what I have to do. I still get to get on a plane and go talk in front of thousands of people. I get to teach courses. I get to write books. I get to do all these things. And sometimes, it comes with a cost. I have to get on a plane and I have to travel places, even though I don't like that. So it's those small reframes. Don't think 2, think 4. Don't think, I have to. Think I get to. It can make all the difference in the world. Would you agree with that, Rocky? Have you seen that? Those shifts sometimes happen.
Yes, small words can make a big difference. I used to coach soccer with kids and they're like, I don't know how to do that. And I'd say, yet. You don't know how to do that yet. And
That's
it
right.
it opens the door to possibility.
That's right.
And so as I heard your story though, I'm thinking, maybe you just need to tell them that you only fly private.
Yeah,
Just send the company jet to come pick me up and I'll be
That's
there.
right.
You'll
That's
save
right.
on travel costs.
That's right. Private jet, or I'll do it live from my lovely studio here,
There
which
you
I can
go.
also do. That from now on, that's the way
Which
to do it, Rocky.
which do you prefer?
Right. Which do you prefer? Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
If the company's got a jet, maybe time it to when it's already going my way.
I'm just saying, if you want to make a richer soul out of me, give me a private jet. That's what I'm talking about.
Travel is not what it used to be, unfortunately. And
Yeah,
you got to
unfortunately.
figure it out.
That's exactly right. You just keep telling yourself, yeah, hey man, I get to, not I have to. It really works, Rocky. It really does. I
No,
use it all the
I
time.
understand. A lot of it is framing.
Yeah.
So you had a corporate career
Yeah.
and then you decided to leave and do something different. What was that all about?
Yeah, about halfway through my corporate career, 3-decade corporate career, Rocky, about halfway through, for a long time, maybe I suspect maybe you're the same way. You had said, you're a corporate misfit, something like that. But, I found myself always studying the environment around me in corporate life, right? Like really trying to discern the difference between someone who happened to be placed in a leadership position and someone who was a truly great leader. Those are two very different things. And I became a student of it, and I studied it over and over and over for many, 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 many years, to the point where, and I began my journey of, learning about, mental strength in leaders, which we'll get to in a minute. And so I actually even wrote my first book while I was still at corporate. And I really, once I wrote that book and I realized, I sold pretty well, and hey, I guess I can do this. I can write, I can speak. I started speaking, broadly outside of just my company. And then, Rocky, it just kind of dawned on me that, hey, you know what? I have an opportunity here. I can continue to stay in corporate and affect, a few lives at a time, a couple hundred, based on the size of the division I'm running. Or I can go and affect, thousands and thousands of people at a time with a written and the spoken word. And once that realization hit me, it became a very easy decision. I knew that I wanted to broaden my platform for making a difference with a written and the spoken word, doing this kind of thing. And so I did that. And I left about a decade ago to be a keynoter and speaker and workshopper and author and course provider. And I've never looked back.
I never looked back either.
Yeah. Right. Except to
I
say,
guess
why didn't I leave sooner?
Yeah, I mean, I think the timing was perfect for me because I realize how much work this is. And like you said, if you've got to travel a lot, it's hard to be there for your kids and do all that stuff if you've got to do that. So for me, it was the perfect time to leave. And it worked out and I have no regrets. And, life happened for me. So I'm okay with it.
That's good. That's a good way to think of it.
So, what inspired you to write the book, The Mentally Strong Leader? Build the habits to productivity, regulate your emotions, thoughts, and behaviors.
Yeah, so I'll start with a definition of what it is, and then I'll tell you a very specific story, Rocky, that led me to believe, like, man, this is a book I have to write. So I'll start with so if I may, I'll start with the definition. Mental strength is simply the ability to regulate productively your emotions, your thoughts, and your behaviors, even in adversity. Frankly, especially in adversity. As I shorthanded, it's how we manage internally so that we can lead better externally at both work and life. And I think you probably know this, Rocky, and your listeners know that, you know that intuitively, that if you want to succeed at anything, you have to be able to self-regulate. You can't just say whatever you think. You can't just let every emotion translate directly into action. You can't just behave however you want. We know that. We know we have to self-regulate. But second exclusive for you today on your podcast. You ready for this?
Yes.
Doing that is really hard. It's really, really hard to self-regulate. And now let me get to answer your question a little bit more directly. With that said, mental strength exists of 6 core mental muscles, if you will. I equate them to physical muscles. There's 6 core mental muscles that equal mental strength: confidence, boldness, decision-making, goal focus, the ability to stay positive-minded in your messaging, and fortitude or resilience. Right? All of these require self-regulation. Now, to answer your question directly, so how did I come to want to write this book? So I've been interested in the topic of mental strength for a long time, and I for the first time years ago, I conducted a study I have since conducted multiple times. I asked 3,000 executives one question: thinking of the highest achieving organizations you've ever been a part of, that achieved the most, that overcame the most obstacles. Thinking of that, what were the attributes of the key leader at that time? And Rocky, the first time I did the study, and every time since, between 90 to 91% of respondents described the same exact profile of a leader. They described the 6 mental muscles I was talking about. They described a leader that had incredible fortitude. They were bold, very decisive, made high quality decisions. They had just incredible confidence about them. They stayed focused on their goals and positive, even in the face of negativity. And so here's the really impressive part. And when I knew I had to write the book, I would then follow up to these 3,000 executives, right? And we would give them a piece of paper and say, thank you so much for your time in describing that leader. But now I want you to pick from this list of 100 choices. And I want you to pick what describes that leader you just described in 1 or 2 words. 95% of the 3,000 executives at a time, Rocky, would pick 2 words on that list of 100 choices: mentally strong, as the words that would describe that leader. And when I began to get excited that maybe we found finally the term that describes the best leaders we've ever had, that helped us achieve the most even in times of adversity, they were mentally strong. It's what makes me believe mental strength is the leadership superpower of our times. It's more than just EQ. EQ is a slice of the broader umbrella of mental strength. And I think, Rocky, you're going to be hearing about mental strength like you have for the next decade, like you have been hearing EQ for the prior decade. And after that study, I knew this is a book I have to write, and I have to share with the world what I've been learning for the last decade.
Well, thank you for sharing. I will admit, I don't always hold my tongue.
Good.
I'm not good at regulating that part of it. You just kind of like deal with it, right? That was part of growing up, I think, when I grew up. That's back then people said what they meant. Nowadays we do it differently. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It just kind of is.
Well, Rocky, depending on, let me know if you want to offer this now or if you wanted to go to a different place. But I can offer you.
Go ahead.
Okay, I can offer you a specific tool to help, because Rocky, first of all, you're not alone. I teach this stuff, and I still have to really deal with navigating negative emotions in the moment, and not necessarily holding your tongue per se, but controlling those emotions to have a more productive output than just losing your cool. So, in the mentally strong leader, within the messaging mental muscle that I talk about, messaging again is the ability to stay positive, even in the face of negativity. Have control and an integrity to your intent so that the message you send to the troops is a positive one. If you're always losing your cool in front of everybody, that does not send a good message. So I have a tool in the mentally strong leader called the redirect rhythm, and I'm going to teach it to you in just a few easy steps. And it really really works, Rocky. I've been teaching it for years. It's a great way to navigate negative emotions in the moment. A couple of simple steps. The first, let's say you and I are having a discussion, Rocky, and you're really getting frustrated with me because I don't know, let's say I'm not listening, right? And you could really feel it building inside, right? The first thing you do, and you intuitively already understand this step, but I'm going to explain to you why it's so important. The first thing you do is you take a breath, right? Literally just. Now, most of us know that, right? Here's what it does. When you do that, it creates space. It creates distance from the intensity of the emotion that you're feeling. It breaks the gravitational pull of that emotion that's bringing you somewhere that you don't want to be. And in that same moment, triggered all by taking the breath, you go right to the next step, which is you name the emotion that you're feeling. You literally ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? In your case, Rocky, in our example, you might say to yourself, okay, you take a deep breath. Okay, I got to pull myself away from this unhelpful gravitational pull that's taking me someplace I don't want to be. What am I feeling right now? All right, I'm feeling frustrated with Scott because I don't feel like he's listening to me. So now that you've named the emotion, psychology proves this to be true. Once you can name what you're feeling, it begins to become an entity, Rocky, outside of you. It doesn't define you. It doesn't mean you are that thing. It's this thing that you are feeling. I am feeling frustrated. And it begins to lose its hold over you as a result because you've now distanced it from within. It is now external to you. I am feeling this thing called frustrated. Then you go to the last steps, and they're very interconnected. This is where you reassess and redirect. You say, okay, so what's really happening here is I'm about to lose my cool because I don't think Scott's listening. I don't think it's going to be productive, though. So I need to redirect. And instead, after my deep breath, I'm going to ask him, Scott, I need you to listen better. I'm going to repeat. I'm going to really ask you to pay attention to what I'm saying this time. Cognitive behavioral therapists call this the 3 C's, right? If you prefer that, which is catch it, check it, change it. You can think about it that way if you want. But it's all triggered by the thing you should do anyways when you're feeling heated, Rocky, which is take a breath. Take a breath, name that emotion, reassess and redirect. It really works. Practice this 5 times. The next time you're feeling heated, Rocky, it becomes a habit. You will have just become a little bit mentally stronger all for it.
I like that. Is it okay to tell the other person your emotion?
Yeah.
Like, I take a breath and go, you know what? I'm frustrated in this moment.
Yes. And in
Okay.
fact, psychology can even tell you there's a term for it. I won't bore your audience with it, but it can even be helpful to do that because it shows vulnerability. It creates clarity. It helps the other person understand, okay, I am subjecting this person to this unhelpful emotion right now, and that emotion is being attached to me. Now, I, as the listener, Rocky, don't want that emotion attached to me. I'm more likely to redirect myself after you get done reassessing and redirecting your own output. So 100%, it could be helpful to name the emotion out loud if it's helpful to you in this situation.
I like that. And I'm a big fan of breath work. I know we're not here to talk about breath work, but
Yeah.
I'll just make the comment. There are different rhythms to breathing, is what I'll just use that word. But depending on the cadence of your breathing and how you do it, you can dramatically shift your state, put you into other states and certain types of states from that you're in, whether it be anger or fear. You can also bring calmness, and you can also release things by using different cadences of breath. And it's quite interesting. And I do it not in that moment. I do it more just as part of daily meditation and all of that. But there is dramatic science behind it. Our breath can control our emotions in a sense.
Yeah, and it's a really helpful aid, right, Rocky? Because the goal here, it's not to minimize your emotions, it's to manage your emotions. That old adage of check your emotions at the door is garbage because we are human beings. We are going to have emotions. It's about managing them, not minimizing them. It's about, instead of reacting, choosing to respond. Reacting and responding are very different things, right? When you react, sometimes what that means is you convert your emotion instantly to action. There is no filter. I am feeling frustrated. It is going to show up as frustrated instantly, right? I'm not asking you to not feel frustrated, Rocky, right? In that example. The point is to say, okay, I'm going to react internally, but I'm going to respond externally. And that's what creating that space gives you the chance to do in that moment, to process. I know what I'm feeling. It's called frustration. I'm not going to let it just flow through into my reaction. I'm going to respond differently. And I'm going to do that by kind of reassessing where I'm at and redirecting my emotions to something more productive. So yeah, it's powerful given what you're saying. Yeah.
What I really loved about the book is in the beginning of the book, uh, is it a quiz, the right word, survey? A whole bunch of questions.
Yeah.
And then based on those results of the answers to those questions, you actually knew where you had to focus
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
what you wanted to have to improve upon. And then from there, you could go to those specific sections of the book and work on that particular thing. I think Strength Finders has a very similar model to how that book is written in being able to do that. What made you choose that?
Yeah. Chapter 2 of The Mentally Strong Leader, just to describe a little bit more to the leader, and then I'll tell you what made me choose it. It was because it's pretty powerful and pretty simple. So I started experimenting with the assessment, right? It's chapter 2 is called the mental strength self-assessment. And like you had mentioned, Rocky, there's 50 questions to it. If it takes you about 15 minutes, and all I ask of the reader is that they're honest and they're even vulnerable, because the output is only going to be as good as the input. And after 15 minutes, it produces an overall mental strength score. You determine which of the 4 proven tiers of mental strength you fall in. No tier is any better than any other. It's all about you and your personal journey, But since people ask, you can score as high all the way up to the top. There's 250 points possible in the assessment. If you score, in the top tier, that's what I call a beacon. You're a beacon of mental strength. If you're at the bottom tier, you're what I call a novice. You're just learning about the concept of mental strength and investing in it, and you're interested in getting stronger. Now, the assessment also produces scores by mental muscle. So I was describing before, there's 6 core mental muscles of mental strength, right? Confidence, boldness, decision making, goal focus, fortitude, the ability to stay, positive, even in the face of negativity as you message to the troops. You get a score for each one of those mental muscles as well. And that allows you to produce your own customized mental strength training regimen. Now to your question, why did I come to the wanting to include this? I have been developing this assessment for a long time with a help of a data scientist to make sure it perfectly correlated with the 6 mental muscles that equate to mental strength, all the self-regulation driven muscles. And we did a test years ago where we issued the assessment to a pool of people, and then we had them follow through with some of the tools. There's over 50 plus tools that help you change your habits and become mentally stronger in the book, The Mentally Strong Leader. And we had them, after they got their score, we had them use a large portion of the tools in the book and then take the assessment again 3 months later and then again 6 months later. And the responses we got were so overwhelmingly positive that, wow. So, I thought that the opposite of mentally strong was mentally weak, but I see that it's not. We all have a baseline of mental strength to work with. I understand what mine is. I use some tools to improve. I saw improvement that made me want to use the tools even more. And so then took it again and so on and so on. So I learned early on, Rocky, that the assessment is a powerful way to not only establish your baseline of mental strength, but it's also a great tool to keep measuring it going forward, and became an absolute must at that point to include in the book, The Mentally Strong Leader.
And that makes sense because now you can look at your progress and see how you're doing and whether you're making some changes and so forth. So there was an interesting point in the book, and I think it's timely as the Olympics are finishing up. It's who does better, the gold medal winner or the silver medal winner?
Yeah, now it might not be what you expect, and I often like, when I'm giving a workshop on this, I like to ask people, and let's play this through with you, Rocky. Let's just have fun with it. And I know you read the book, so you know what's coming here, but let's have some fun with it. Pretend you hadn't read the book, The Mentally Strong Leader, yet. And I was going to ask you, timely with the Olympics. So if you had a choice, if you were an Olympic medal athlete and you had a choice, and I gave you a choice, Rocky, would you rather be known as a gold medal winner or a silver medal winner? Your answer would probably, of course, be what?
The gold medal winner.
Like 100% of people that I asked, but not so fast. A really interesting study from the University of Virginia showed something that might really surprise you. In a study of over 654 track and field athletes from all around the world, both men and women across a variety of sports, a variety of countries, they did a study that took over 50 years to complete because they were studying the lives and the progression of both silver medal winners out of that group and gold medal winners. And they found, and hold on to your hats for this one, they found that the silver medal winners ultimately ended up being more successful in life. They had better jobs, they made more money, and they even tended to live longer than gold medal winning athletes. And the study concluded that it's these kinds of setbacks that you can face in life. And believe me, if you've ever known an Olympic athlete or you interview them, and I have, I can tell you, they go to the games with a mindset of they're there to win the gold. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. Anything that gets in their way of winning the gold is viewed as a setback. And so anyone who doesn't win the gold has experienced some pretty severe setbacks in their life. They trained for 4 years for something they didn't fully achieve. It's these setbacks that happen. And by the way, you and I, Rocky, we have a chance for these setbacks to happen to us every day, not just once every 4 years. The better we get at processing those setbacks, the greater result it has on our ultimate success in life. And that's what the study showed.
So when I was reading it, I laughed because I picked silver. And I'll tell you why. A long time ago, I read about people who excelled in sports. And so they looked at high school kids going into college and then pro, if they made pro. And the question was, who does better? The kid who's in high school who gets the A player recommendations, or the kid in high school who gets the B and C player recommendations? And it turned out it was the B and C player kids who actually exceeded and did better. And the reason why was along the same lines. The A player kids had some natural talent. They had never really faced a difficult situation.
Yeah, right.
And they had no grit and they had no fortitude, which is one of the words you used earlier, to be able to overcome that adversity. And because they were naturally talented, they were lazy.
That's right.
In a sense, they didn't need to practice. They didn't need to try too hard. And so those B and C players always had to work harder. They had
Yes.
to keep going. They had to figure things out. And because of it, they turned out to have grit and fortitude. And so when the A player hit the wall, they crumbled.
Yes.
When the B and C player hit the wall, they go, yeah, okay, next.
Been there.
And they
Done
just
that.
been there, done that, and back again. And I even heard about this in other ways. They looked at, I think it was kids who played soccer. And what they found is the kids who played soccer in South America on dirt fields with no grass and no turf turned out to be better players. And part of the reason why is when you play soccer on a turf field, the ball is very predictable.
Yes.
When you play soccer on a dirt patch, it hits a stick, it hits a rock, it hits a bump. That ball is very unpredictable. And these
Yes.
kids learned to play in unpredictable situations. And so they had that edge that nobody else had.
That's
And
right.
in both of those, I think, kind of fit into that situation. Too often we want to make things perfect. It is the imperfections, the failures in these things that give us the grit and fortitude to go forward.
That's exactly right. It's why fortitude is such a central, core mental muscle of mental strength. It's one of the, I think it's the second one in the book that I really dive deep into, the fortitude muscle. And it's exactly what you're saying. Psychology even has a term for those people you're talking about, the B and C players. They're called strivers. People that know that, they're going to strive to keep doing their best no matter what. They know setbacks are coming. They know how to reframe the setbacks. They know how to see what I call the agreeable adversity in any situation. There's something about a setback that they can learn from that will make them better, stronger, faster, to go higher, harder, farther, faster. And yeah, it's a huge part of mental strength, and one I dive into quite deeply in the Mentally Strong Leader.
The other thing that popped up was the concept of handling criticism.
Oh yeah,
Because I don't think we're never taught this, are we? Your brother taught you that,
yeah,
right?
yeah. But
As a
because you were
kid,
forced to, yeah, that's right,
because
100%.
yeah, you were forced to, but normally we aren't taught how to do that.
Not necessarily, and I learned some lessons early in life that, and I'll be curious, Rocky, to see if this surprises you. One of the most important lessons I learned, and I talk about it a lot in the Mentally Strong Leader, about the ability to. It makes sense. You have to be able to process to criticism if you want to remain confident and be mentally strong. But one of the most important things you can do is, Rocky. First, you have to decide who gets to criticize you. Not all criticizers are created equal, So as an example, I don't know, your boss probably, yeah, they probably get a vote. Your partner in life, for sure. Your kids, well, sure. Some key coworkers, yes, they can criticize you, but Bob in accounting, or the guy who just doesn't like you, or your nosy next door neighbor, no, they don't get a vote. It's a lot like Brené Brown often says, if you aren't in the arena, man, I'm not here to listen to a word that you say. So you have to start by really discerning who gets to criticize you to begin with, to determine whether or not they make the cut, right? Does that make sense to you, Rocky? Is that surprising to you at all that I would suggest that?
No, not at all. Not at all. That I think too often we don't always judge that,
Yeah.
or we don't have discernment around that. I think over time, some of us learn that.
Yeah, right. That Rocky, you just don't want to put undue influence and power into the hands of people who shouldn't have it to begin with. And by no means, Rocky, am I saying, at all that, oh, okay, assume right now that no one has the right to criticize you. That is the opposite of what I'm talking about, right? That would be ridiculous. You would never grow. You would never take feedback. You'd be a jerk. I'm just talking about being more discerning because, perfect example, I've told my own daughter before, look, when you're on social media, these people that don't know you, that by the way are posting all their highlight reels, and you're comparing them to your blooper reels, like they don't count, they don't matter, they don't get a say in who you are and what you become and what you are becoming. They don't know you, they don't count. There are clear ways you can discern in your life who makes the cut and who doesn't. That's really my point. And the first step to be able, to handle criticism well.
I've never studied this, but I'm betting boo boo reels have much more engagement than highlight reels.
Sure,
I'm just guessing that.
I have proof. I have proof for you. Go tune into the evening news next time. The National Evening News. Remember that? Dinosaur of a thing that used to exist. It still exists. Guess what they have? They don't have feel good stories on there, man. They have national and global boo boo stories. Why? Because that's what we tune into. That's what gets the clicks. So yeah, I think you're probably right on that front.
So, out of all of these different areas that you talk about in the book, are there some that are more difficult to, I don't know if overcome's the right word, but are there some of them that are more difficult to incorporate into life than others? Or does it just depend on the person and their particular situation?
Yeah, it's much more so the latter, Rocky. What I thought you were going to ask is there one mental muscle out of those six that people disproportionately end up after they take the assessment saying, "Wow, I guess I need to work on this muscle more than I thought I needed to work on the muscle." And while none of them are harder than any other to implement, it all depends on where you are in your journey. What I can say is the confidence muscle is one that tends to come up the most often for people that most often have to work on. That's probably not a surprise to you. And it also depends on the extent to which it's already developed in you. And to make the case here, let me draw a parallel for a second between mental muscles and physical muscles, right? So Let's say, Rocky, that you were a bodybuilder and you're huge and you're cut, you're jacked, right? If you just stop going to the gym, guess what's going to happen? Those muscles are going to turn flabby, right? They're going to deteriorate, and you're not going to maintain that. Same thing with your mental muscles. If you don't strengthen them over time and keep going back to the gym, in this case, I like to think of the gym as the book, The Mentally Strong Leader, with all the exercises in it. If you don't keep going back and exercising those muscles, you're going to lose that mental strength, just like you can lose physical strength. So to your question of, well, are any of them harder to implement than others? You don't know that until you know where you stand on each muscle. When you take that assessment, you could see, that's interesting. I'm more bold than I thought I was naturally. So maybe I don't have to do as much work here. Maybe that one's not as hard to implement. Now, what surprises me is how low my confidence level is. I know that's going to be difficult because that's tough for me. I'm going to really need to work on that. So the extent to which any one is more difficult than any other one all depends on how developed that mental muscle is for you and where you want to take that muscle.
And that kind of makes sense because the inner critic we all have knocks into that whole space. But, I just had this cynical thought and I thought it was hilarious. It's like, if I knew people who read the book, I'd be like, Scott, just because you know this, I need to take a moment to criticize you so that you can get a workout in.
Say, bring it on, right? If I'm gonna, I better live it if I teach it, and I do know it works though. So yeah, bring it on.
At the end of the day, and as I look through this is all inner work. It's work that we all have to do on the inside. So that's the other funny thing that I've noticed is if I go to a self-development conference, there are two types of people at the conference: business owners and C-suite, or people who are rising quickly up the ranks. I find the average employee is not there doing the inner work or trying to. And even when, like, I've been to Tony Robbins, there's 15,000 people in the room. Some of the companies that show up bring 500 people. And I find 480 of them don't listen. I don't know if you've noticed that. And because you're doing keynotes, how do you deal with that in the sense that I'm assuming Corporation X brings you in to talk to their people, and yet the people aren't necessarily listening?
Well, two things to that, two pieces to that. Excellent point, Rocky, and excellent question. First of all, to the universe of self-helpers that are interested in the concept but just don't want to put in the work. Here's the first thing I would say, especially in the case of mental strength. You remember, Rocky, when I was saying that? We all know we need to self-regulate our emotions, our thoughts, and our behaviors, mental strength. We all know that, but it's hard, right? We all agree with that. It's universal. We know it's hard. Well, the help that you can put around people that are struggling to do the work and put in the work is habit building science. It's built into the book, and in fact, the subtitle of the book is the habit, build the habits to productively regulate your emotions, your thoughts, and your behaviors. And it's built into the book over and over and over again. And what is a habit? A habit is a set of repetitions. You get to repeat things with systems and frameworks in place. There's over 50 plus tools in the Mentally Strong Leader, the book, that serve as systems or frameworks so that you know what the first small step is to take. You know what to do in moments of weakness. You know how to overcome those natural tendencies that get in the way of habit building. So first I would say, to the people that want to put in the work, but it's hard, there's help in becoming mentally stronger if you embrace the habits, the systems and the frameworks that will help you get there. Point number one. Second part of your question is, what do you do if you're in a room and you're assuming 80% of the people don't want to be there and they're there because the corporation forces them to be? Well, what I can proudly say, Rocky, and we didn't set this up ahead of time. I didn't know you were going to ask that question. I can proudly and also humbly say this, that, and there's a good principle in this, the one word I hear most often back after a keynote, and it's just a fact, it's true, you can even see it on my website, is the word riveting. You have to engage people's hearts and their minds. you have to tell a story. You have to provide practical, pragmatic tools and tips and takeaways within a keynote or any communication if you want them to stay engaged and if you want to earn their right for them to listen to you for however long you plan on talking, right? That probably isn't too surprising to you, but that's what I really focus on trying to do.
No, and I haven't heard one of your keynotes, so I don't know, but I'm assuming then you do a lot of storytelling.
I do. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that doesn't surprise me because a lot of what I've been reading, a lot of what I've been hearing is, and also just in the world of teaching,
Yes.
people are like, people don't want to be taught. People want to
Right.
hear stories.
That's right.
They want, that's what they remember.
That's right.
And the art of a good story is also very good. It's and the good story has that double kind of art. And then you just follow a good Hollywood script. It follows that same thing. And it's amazing how these things all kind of crisscross. Because even if you're not a high powered executive, you know, these skills work at home,
Yes.
right? They
Yes.
work with your family. They work at just the things you want to do in life and the things you want to deal with. And so they're applicable in every part of life. I call them universal principles. People in a particular situation are forced to possibly do more because they have to. It's a shame. You know, I will say this, maybe you can do this if you have enough time. Could we get the presidential candidates in to you could teach them how to be
I'd be happy. I'll be happy to do that, so we all can bear to listen to either one. You know, you know,
Yes.
you know. It's interesting too, Rocky. I wanted to build on a point, and I want to see if you agree with this. Not only is storytelling so important, you know, but if you bring it back to mental strength, you know, some of the most mentally strong leaders that I've ever seen, and believe me, I have interviewed thousands and thousands of them in writing the book, The Mentally Strong Leader, and I can tell you, the best storytellers are the ones that have the mental strength, the fortitude, the self confidence, the self acceptance, and self belief to be vulnerable in their storytelling. And I give you a perfect example. Who would you rather follow, Rocky? A leader who stands up in front of you and says, I have all the answers, Rocky. Just take notes on what I say and follow me because here we go. Or would you rather follow the next one? Rocky, I believe in this group. I believe in you. We've thought through a lot of things. I think we have pretty good plans, but I'm here to tell you, I don't have everything figured out yet. We're going to figure it out together as we go. And, you know, I'm not embarrassed to tell you there are some things I just don't know how they're going to pan out, but we're going to put our best effort behind it, right? Is it even a contest who you'd rather follow, right? You'd rather follow the person who's being honest and vulnerable and open in what they share with the organization. So not only is it storytelling, if you want to be mentally strong, be willing to put some vulnerability and humility into those very stories that you tell.
And that is very true. Even as you were speaking, the word in my mind before you even said it was vulnerable.
Yeah,
So I was
yeah,
like, oh, yeah, he's going to say vulnerable.
yeah, yeah. That's right.
And I think a lot of that, it's funny because a lot of that came out. Ooh, it's been over 10 years now, right? Who was it? I got the book somewhere.
Brené
She kind
Brown,
of,
probably.
Brene Brown.
Yeah,
Yeah, she
yeah.
really introduced
Yeah.
that concept of vulnerability. And I don't know, you tell me, do you find women leaders are more vulnerable than men? Or is it also that they get the other thing is they're afraid to be vulnerable because they have to kind of deal with the alpha male?
Yeah, I think there's probably some of that, you know, going on as well. And there's a little bit of cultural stigmatism to the concept of a man being vulnerable in front of a group. And I think, you know, a lot of thanks to, you know, Brené Brown's work and a lot of other leaders and, you know, some even work in my space too, just showing the power of flipping that old adage on its head and showing how vulnerability to me is about humanity and connection, Rocky. You know, if I'm going to come across as vulnerable, it's my way of saying, hey, you and I, we're a lot more alike than we are different. I might be standing on the stage. I might be 4 levels above you in the organization, but we have a lot more common threads than you think. And that's vulnerability allows you to make that connection.
Hmm. What else should we have touched on from the book that we haven't gotten to yet?
You know, geez, I could go on all day about, you know, examples of each of the muscles. There's the 6 core mental muscles that equate to mental strength. But I would just say this, Rocky, I don't, I don't want your listeners to feel intimidated by the concept of becoming mentally stronger. I opened up by saying how difficult it can be. Yes, it can be difficult. But, remember, the opposite of mentally strong is not mentally weak. We all start with a baseline. It's about assessing where you stand yourself by taking the assessment, picking the tools that are right for you, the muscles that you want to build, maybe that don't come as naturally to you. Maybe it's fortitude, boldness, and confidence for you, and goal focus and decision making comes very easy to you, whatever it is for you. And then knowing that by putting in the work, you will see improvement over time, and you absolutely can become mentally stronger. Any one of us can do it at work and in life.
Is there something that limits people to achieving this? And what I mean by that is it's something internal, probably, right?
I think so. And it's this, Rocky. We forget sometimes that, hey, geez, I don't know if I'm confident enough to become truly mentally stronger. And we forget this, Rocky. We get the definition of confidence wrong. Confidence is not the absence of doubt. It is not. Confidence is the ability to manage your relationship with doubt. Because we all have a relationship, even the most confident people I interviewed for the book, The Mentally Strong Leader, wouldn't tell you that doubt was never there. It's ever present in some form, often quite, ways in the background. But managing that relationship with doubt allows you to understand, I may have some doubts about my ability to become mentally strong. I may be feeling mentally strong one day and riddled with self-doubt, or I don't have fortitude, or I can't stay focused on my goals, and I begin to doubt my ability to get better at this. And that's okay. It's natural. It's human. It happens to all of us. Just remember that you too can become mentally stronger.
I'm working on being comfortable when I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah, I like that.
You
I
know,
like that. You just got to
not
let it sit in the
easy.
backdrop, right? It really isn't easy. In fact, it's part. I talk in the book, The Mentally Strong Leader, about one element of confidence. The opposite of self-accepting is imposter syndrome. And a big element of overcoming imposter syndrome, the feeling that people are going to find you as a fraud, that you got what you got by mistake and through other people. Part of overcoming that is what you're talking about, Rocky. Just being okay with letting it sit in the backdrop. Be okay with what we'll say are imposter feelings, but not being okay with imposter thoughts. You can be okay with feeling like, yeah, I have doubt if I'm really going to deserve this promotion, if I'm really going to excel in it. That's natural. Let it sit there. Let it work for you. But don't let imposter thoughts creep in, where specific thoughts like, I can't do this job. Let it sit in the background so you can focus on how you're going to do the job, not if you can do the job. So, yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Being comfortable with being uncomfortable is a key part of self-acceptance, confidence, and overall mental strength.
I'm working on it little by little.
Yeah, it's okay. It takes time for all of us, man, right?
What's your secret to living an abundant life?
For me, it is remembering to stop chasing approval and get back to chasing authenticity.
Interesting. I like it.
Yeah, and it happens to a lot of us, Rocky, where we get off track seeking approval from others, which is really a empty victory, an elusive victory at best and soul crushing at worst. And we lose sight of who we are. In our bid for approval, we become degrees and degrees farther away from who we really are, and we forget that it's really about chasing your authentic self and start chasing authenticity, stop chasing approval.
What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
Yeah, I would definitely say to remember that sometimes the enemy is the internal me. It goes to what you were talking about earlier, Rocky. That inner chatter we can just get lost in that, just beating ourselves up over and over again with negative thoughts and beliefs and attitudes. And sometimes that enemy is the internal me, and I got to remember to turn that voice off. Wish I would have known that a lot sooner in life. I've gotten much better at it over the years. Well
If you were
said.
to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Yeah, I probably would say the only comparison that matters is to who you were yesterday and whether or not you're becoming a better version of yourselves. I see it happening now a lot with teenage groups, Rocky, especially in the social media world. We're drawn to irrelevant comparisons. And comparisons are good in life, right? They can be. They give us a standard to shoot for. They give us goals to aim for. It's irrelevant comparisons that get in the way when we compare to irrelevant others that have no bearing on us and our situation. And so, yeah, I think that's what I would say. The only comparison that matters is to who you were yesterday and whether or not you're becoming a better version of yourself.
If people would like to learn more about you and the book, how do they do that?
Sure, go to scottmautz.com, SCOTTMATZ.com. You can learn about my workshops, my keynotes, my books there, especially The Mentally Strong Leader. And I put together a gift for your listeners today, Rocky.
Yeah.
If they're interested, if they would like a free 60-page PDF that they can download, that includes the mental strength self-assessment that you and I were talking about, as well as some prompts to help you get the most out of the book, The Mentally Strong Leader. If you're interested in that free 60-page PDF, just go to scottmautz.com/mentally strong gift, and you can download it right away.
And we will make sure to put that in the show notes. Thank you
Right on.
so much for joining us today.
I'm richer for having been here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for checking out this unedited video of the Richer Soul podcast. You can find the full episode along with all the back episodes at richersoul.com. This podcast is brought to you by Profit Comes First, where we help business owners to have a more profitable and growing business so they can live the life of their dreams. Check that out as well wherever you listen to all this content.